Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nihilist Wrestling, episode number 7. I am your host, Ash Manson. Thank you all so much for being here. We've been gaining a little bit of traction on Facebook lately. If you click this link from Facebook, please go to YouTube and throw me a like and a subscribe if you wish. If you happen to encounter this video on YouTube, I would also appreciate a like and subscribe if you wish. The algorithm gods are not too kind to me on there. Well, so what are we going to get into today? I'm about to give you a spicy take on the whole AEW CM Punk All In backstage footage situation. I have not seen my point of view articulated yet on the internet, so you want to know what I think about that? Well, stay tuned. We're actually going to get into that pretty early because that's the talk of the town lately. Also, so much has happened since I talked to you guys last. I filmed last episode before SmackDown, Rampage, Collision, Supercard of Honor, WrestleMania, nights 1 and 2, and the Raw after WrestleMania. So we have so much that I want to get into today, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to it. So here it is. Here's my hot take about the CM Punk AEW All In situation. I liked it. I know what you're thinking, just hear me out. I did not go into this situation thinking I was going to hold this opinion. I heard that AEW was going to be airing the backstage footage from All In regarding CM Punk and Jack Perry, and I was like, ooh, really? We going there? We going to open up this wound that's still closing? I was so skeptical, and that's why I want to go on record as saying I went into it skeptical, but I liked it. And there's a couple reasons I liked it. Number one, what did Eric Bischoff used to say? Controversy creates cash. So we might think that it's a little sketch that AEW's airing their dirty laundry on television, but what are we doing? We're tuning in, we're either watching the show or we're going to YouTube to see what happened. We wanted to see it. It was like what we thought was going to be a train wreck, so of course we couldn't look away. We had to see it. Number two, Matthew Jackson was wearing a scapegoat shirt, kind of like saying that Jack Perry reminds him of a young version of them. That means that it kind of cracks the door open for Jack Perry to reappear on AEW television, and you got to think some people might love him because they hated CM Punk and, he was toxic for AEW. And, some people might hate him because they got that he was the scapegoat, as he says, that got rid of CM Punk. But regardless, fans are going to have a reaction. When Jack appears on AEW television again, people are going to feel something. They are going to be making noise. And I know, the Young Bucks tried to make it about business, and I know that was kind of like a flimsy attempt to, take something that's very behind the scenes in nature and make it about the on-screen product. Saying, this is why we were distracted in our match going into FTR, and I get why they did it. I also get why we more or less see through it. Let's be honest. What was it about? It was about CM Punk's interview with Ariel Helwani on MMA Hour, just when he basically ran the company through the mud. He did his account of what happened to Jack Perry. I don't remember exactly how he said it went down, but it was more or less consistent with what we saw on Dynamite. But when you do see the footage, you see you keep in mind that Jack was being a twat. I mean, there's no denying that. His insistence on breaking the glass of a rental car previously, that was absurd. And CM Punk made a great point when he said that rental cars aren't gonna like rental car companies aren't gonna want to rent to them in the future, and that's bad business. Jack going on camera on the pay-per-view and saying, "Oh, look at this, it's real grass, cry me a river." That was a bitch move. That was absolutely a bitch move. So did Jack have something coming his way? Absolutely. I don't want to make it seem like I'm sticking up for Jack Perry necessarily. And you might also see I'm wearing a CM Punk shirt, right? CM Punk is my second favorite wrestler of all time. But I'm going to be objective about this. When you look at the footage and Jack and Punk are getting into it, Jack was using his words. Now, his words he was probably being a little bitch with those words, but he was using his words, and he was playing with his hair at the moment that Punk tried to shove or punch him. It wasn't 100% like apparent to me, but Punk like threw the first strike and he started choking him out. Punk was clearly the aggressor. So when you look at that and you think about like what CM Punk said on MMA Hour, so regardless of whether or not he may have made some good points about AEW's lack of structure or Tony Khan not being a real boss, it's still like you look at the footage and you think, yeah, Punk, he's a little bit of a loose cannon there, it definitely kind of like it gives you the other side of the story. So yeah, Punk might have been philosophically in the right, but he had such a dickish way of making his point, and the way that he physically assaulted Jack, it just adds another perspective to the whole thing. But regardless of what we think about who was right and who was wrong, and we'll also like talk briefly about the Hangman Page situation, as Punk detailed in his interview. Like Hangman and Punk had fleshed out like a promo they were going to do on television. I believe it was on Dynamite one night, and Hangman went out there and cut a completely different promo about how he was out there to protect AEW from Punk, and that's not what they went through. So he went into business for himself. Like, Punk was right for being pissed about that. He was right that Tony Khan should have done something about that. He was right about a lot of things, but he was also an irrational little shithead that like has a temper and can fly off the handle easily. So it contextualizes things, but it puts eyes on AEW's product. And like I said, I think it's going to create a really hot angle when Jack Perry comes back. And let's talk about some of the other things that were said throughout WrestleMania weekend, like Triple H's little dig at people like Okada and Will Ospreay and Mercedes. I'm assuming that the chose AEW for more money or a lighter schedule, and Triple H said something to the effect of, well, hey, if you're not about the grind, I'm glad I didn't pick you, which is such a shit take. And I'm going to contextualize this by saying Triple H, I love the job he's doing in WWE. He's among my top 10 favorite wrestlers of all time. I am a Click guy. Like all 5 members of the Click are in my top 10 favorite wrestlers of all time. I am a Triple H guy, but that was a shit take. Another business offers you more money to work fewer dates, and they're wrong for not choosing the grind. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit take. Like, grind culture is so 10 years ago. I'm glad people are starting to resist that as a narrative. You are not smart or better because you do more work. It's just obscene. So I'm glad that Will Ospreay clapped back at him. Also, Pat McAfee made this remark on his show about Dominic Mysterio. If he didn't have Rhea Ripley, he'd be wrestling in front of 600 people at the other company. Another dig at AEW. I'm saying all this to say that what you saw on Dynamite, it was not unprovoked. And I've seen the take that, well, WWE is taking all these shots at AEW, like, on their interviews, kind of on lesser known platforms. They're not talking about them on their television program. And I get that, right? But WWE has the luxury of confining their shots to, their interviews and their media that they're doing. They're the number one company. Like, not as many eyeballs are going to be on AEW Dynamite, and even fewer eyes are going to be on the media that they do. So they're using their platform to take their shots at the number one company. You know how the old saying goes: when you're number two, you throw everything you got at number one, and when you're number one, number two doesn't exist. Well, number one is not following that. They are not pretending AEW doesn't exist anymore. Not only are they acknowledging their existence, but they're also throwing a bunch of shade at AEW. So seeing this counterpunch, I get it's not mature, alright? It's not the morally high ground thing to do. It is a little bit cringe, but seeing it in its execution, I'm not mad at it. We're talking about it, aren't we? I'm talking into this camera about the most hot topic in wrestling right now, and it's what happened last night. Well, I'm filming this on Thursday. It's probably going to air on Friday. On Wednesday night on AEW Dynamite. So, you know what? I think that AEW, I'm not mad at it. I like it. I know not a whole lot of people feel that way, and they're in their right to not feel that way. But hey, I'm just offering a difference of opinion. Plus, I recently watched an interview with Ronda Rousey, the one that people have been talking about, where she says WWE is toxic and she thinks Vince is still running the show, whether or not that's true. And there's also some controversial things with Drew Gulak grabbing her drawstring and all that. Gulak says that was an accident. Who knows? I'm not going to get into that. I don't know, right? Toni Storm also came out in a recent interview saying that she doesn't know what she would be doing with her life if it wasn't for AEW. Apparently something about WWE must have rubbed her the wrong way. The moral of the story is AEW is important to a lot of people, and they have every right to defend their honor in any which way that they choose to do so. And you're allowed to find it cringe, but if you're still watching the product, well, they got you. Well, what can I say? So many other things to talk about, so let's get into the week in review, and then we're going to talk about WrestleMania a little bit. So much wrestling has happened since last time we talked. I had to make myself a list so I didn't forget any of it. So I recorded the last episode before last SmackDown, so we're going to briefly touch on that, and then we're going to go from there all the way up until Dynamite from Wednesday. So this includes WrestleMania nights 1 and 2. I'm just going to offer some brief thoughts on everything that has transpired in this past week or so. So SmackDown, I thought, nothing too crazy happened. It was mostly just hype for WrestleMania. Of course, there were some matches and all that were pretty cool. The only note I have is about Dragon Lee being beat down. That was a little confusing for me because it was supposed to be Rey and Dragon Lee versus Dominic and Santos Escobar. I thought that match seemed so random and out of left field. It was probably the match I had the biggest problem with at WrestleMania. So I thought it was just WWE's way of trying to put the shine on Dragon Lee, because it really seems like they're pushing him to be like the next Rey Mysterio or something like that. So when I saw Dragon Lee get beat down, I'm like, what? Now I'm even more confused as to why this match is happening in the first place. But then Andrade turns on Dom, so they restructure the match to be Rey and Andrade versus Dom and Santos. We're going to talk about that later. Otherwise, I don't really think a whole lot of note happened on SmackDown. Rampage happened. I probably watched it. I don't remember anything from it, really. There was just so much going on that weekend that AEW's Rampage and Collision being shoehorned in there to WrestleMania week was just I watched the shows, but I have a bandwidth limit for processing all of this, so I can't really say I felt much about Rampage at all. I do want to talk a little bit about ROH Supercard of Honor. Generally speaking, I feel about that show the way I generally feel when I watch TNA. Like, I watch it and I'm like, this is a pretty good show. Like, I enjoy it. However, if I didn't watch it, I don't really feel like I missed much. And that's kind of how I've felt about Ring of Honor in general. However, I did fork over the $10 to sign up for Honor Club. Finally, previously they weren't putting the pay-per-views in with your Honor Club subscription. Now that they've rolled them in, I'm like, all right, now I can justify paying that. Plus, I watch. There's 6 shows I've been watching every week. I know it's a lot, but I try to watch Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage every week. And the way is just to kind of maintain some sort of symmetry. Like, I watch WWE's A and B shows and their separate, like, developmental show with their own set of titles and all that. Like, wouldn't it be more symmetric if I watched Dynamite, Collision, and Ring of Honor? Because that's kind of AEW's not developmental necessarily, but kind of separate show, which they put some of the lesser known talent on. I'm gonna try watching Ring of Honor regularly. We'll see. I know historically Ring of Honor's had a pretty dry format where they just have match, and not a whole lot of story. And I know Tony Khan kind of has a hard-on for that format, and that's not necessarily for me. I like storytelling with my great wrestling, but we're going to give it a shot. But about Supercard of Honor, I thought Lee Johnson and Kyle Fletcher had an absolute banger. Like Kyle Fletcher, I'm so distracted by how goofy that motherfucker looks. Like, with that, like, bleach blonde to the point that it's yellow, that weird-ass haircut, almost looks Trump-like in a way. Like, he's like the envy of the entire internet, dating Sky Blue looking like that. I don't want to pick on the guy, but he just looks goofy. Good thing he's really good in the ring. Lee Johnson, it's also like, he hasn't had a lot of reps on AEW television. That dude can fucking go. Of course, he is dating actually married to Julia Hart. So the two of them, like, their women are teaming together. So there's that kind of symmetry in that match and all that. But they had a damn good match where Kyle Fletcher retained his television title. I also thought the women's television title, the inaugural women's television title match between Billy Starks and Queen Aminata. That was very interesting because, like, Billy Starks straight up got me. Like, when they had this spot where Aminata hits a move off the top rope and Billy Starks pretends like she's injured. And I know this spot has been done many times throughout wrestling history, but, Billy Starks, like, grabbed the ref's shirt and, like, pulled him down, like, to her. And, she's very young and all that, and she was just, like, squirming, and she seemed like she was hurt. And I'm just like, it just hurt my heart to see that young lady, like, on the mat, seemingly in so much pain. But it was a ruse. She was actually not injured. And, she, like, got the win over Aminata in a deceitful manner. That was, that was a very good match, and I thought it was quite interesting. Then we have Mark Briscoe winning the ROH World title and a match against Eddie Kingston. That was another great match, and I think it'd been, like, almost, if not 11 years to the day since Jay Briscoe won his Ring of Honor World title. It was just a real good match and a feel-good moment to end the show. So I thought that was a good show. And then there was a Collision. I believe that actually happened after WrestleMania Night 1. Nothing too notable happened except for Dustin Rhodes challenged Samoa Joe for the AEW World Championship, which Joe would deny the challenge and give him an eliminator match instead. But it kind of seemed a little crazy because it's like AEW was like, hey, we got a Rhodes and we got a Samoan named Joe. Yeah, you know how Roman Reigns' name is actually, his middle name is Joseph, and he goes by Joe. So we're like, hey, let's have our own version of the WrestleMania main event. That's the only real takeaway I had from Collision. So, here we go. We're going to start talking about WrestleMania, just briefly, my thoughts about nights 1 and 2. We kick off with Rhea Ripley defending her women's world title against Becky Lynch. It was exactly what I wanted. Rhea gets the win over Becky. And before I go any further, I was only wrong about 2 matches. I predicted everything. Even the tag team title split and the exact people who won the titles after they were split. The only 2 I got wrong were the secondary title matches, the Intercontinental title and the US title. So I'll just note that before we go any further. But, just because, like matches were predictable doesn't necessarily mean they were bad or anything like that. The next match, again, probably the boldest prediction that I got right. DIY, New Day, Awesome Truth, Judgment Day of Damian Priest, Finn Balor, A-Town Down Under, and New Catch Republic in that 6-team tag team match. So glad that they split those titles up, because I felt it was so insulting to our intelligence to defend them as one, but have them still carry around separate belts. I know Roman was doing that for a while, and it bugged me when he did it too. And even after Roman consolidated his belts, they maintained separate sets of tag team title belts. I've said this several times, with Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce fighting over exclusive contracts and with the draft looming, you absolutely had to split those titles up. So I'm glad that happened the way it did, with the Awesome Truth winning the Raw Tag Team titles. So happy for The Miz and R-Truth, guys that have put in so much work making other people look good. They deserve their moment, especially R-Truth has not gotten nearly enough accolades for as entertaining as he has been for so long. And A-Town Down Under win the SmackDown titles. I really hope this ends up down the line, starting a program between them and the Wolf Dogs, Braun Breaker and Baron Corbin. Braun lost his Braun and Baron lost their NXT tag team titles. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, so then that's just because Braun's going to get called up, and I think that for A-Town Down Under to have a good program, I would like to see the Wolf Dogs, who've been super over in NXT, go up to the main roster and feud with them. Alright, moving on. Andrade and Rey versus Santos Escobar and Dominic Mysterio. This match, again, it made so little sense. It seemed like program mixing. It seemed incoherent. It's the biggest criticism I have about all of WrestleMania. Not only that the match was just so random in terms of the random ass teams and all that, but also I think the wrong team won. They had Rey and Andrade go over, making Dominic losing 2 WrestleManias in a row. He's supposed to be your future. What the fuck are we doing? I didn't like anything about that. I'm sorry. It just wasn't for me. Jey Uso versus Jimmy Uso was a little anticlimactic. There was so much build for this. It felt so hot. The crowd was into it, and they gave him about 11 minutes. I was right in my prediction that Jey would win, but I also think they dropped the ball. It could have been big towards elevating Jimmy. I don't think Jey necessarily needed to root for his brother. He would still, go over his brother. He'd still be super over. But we do see that Jey ended up winning the number 1 contendership for the World Heavyweight title, so that was probably the thinking there. Alright, where are we? Damage Control. Dakota Kai, Asuka, Kairi Sane versus Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, and Naomi. Of course, Jade, Naomi, and Bianca won. That was great. I think just the way they showcased 3 strong black women sure meant a lot to a lot of people. So yeah, I liked that match for sure. Maybe the excuse me. Maybe the biggest surprise of the entire show for me was Sami Zayn going over Gunther. I was hoping for it. I wasn't expecting it. Like I said, this was one of the 2 I was wrong about, but I loved it. Gunther does not need that title anymore. He had a 666-day reign, which I think is pretty nice, 666-day reign. And he put Sammy over. Hopefully Sammy has a good reign. I mean, Sammy is now a 4-time, I think, Intercontinental Champion, so it's not like he broke any ground necessarily. But I still I still liked it. Sammy remained relevant, and they had Kevin Owens come and greet Sammy before the match to help motivate him and all that. So I thought that maybe Kevin was going to win later, but that was one of the two I was wrong about. So let's keep going. We got the Bloodline, The Rock and Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. That happened exactly the way that it should. And The Rock pinning Cody Rhodes definitely set us up for some interesting... an interesting moment, an interesting program in the future, and of course set us up for a Bloodline rules match that I figure we all thought we were going to get anyway, whether it would be legal or not. So, let's get into WrestleMania Night 2, and I predicted this first match exactly the way it happened. Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre going at it for the World Heavyweight Championship. Seth is clearly not 100%, exactly the way I said. Drew capitalizes on that, hits multiple claymores, time after time after time, before finally Seth stays down for the 3 count. Drew has an emotional moment. He holds the title, looks like he's on the brink of tears. He goes over to his wife and hands his wife the title. Then earlier, I believe, Seth points at Drew and says, "You fucking deserve it, man," which is great because, of course, Drew's been doing excellent work lately. Then he goes and he gloats at CM Punk. He's like, "Hey, take a picture of this, frame it," holding that title in his face, saying, "Look at me, I am the champion, you're not, ha ha ha," and then Punk gets fed up, waits for Drew to turn his back, sweeps his legs out from under him, beats him up a little, takes his cast and bashes him over the head. And what do you know? Senor Money in the Bank comes out, cashes in, and becomes a World Heavyweight Champion. I could not be happier about both things. Drew getting his moment, and it also being foiled by Damian Priest. Damian Priest is a superstar who has been hiding in plain sight. I cannot wait to see what happens with Damian's reign. Again, can't say enough good things about everything that happened in that match and how it set up the future. All right, let's keep going down this list. Io Sky versus Bayley. We all thought Bayley was going to win that, and she did. It was a really good, feel-good moment, cementing Bayley as the top babyface woman on SmackDown. LA Knight versus AJ Styles. LA Knight gets the dub, of course, an ascending superstar gets the win over the older guy that probably doesn't have a ton of time left. Not to say that LA Knight is a spring chicken or anything, but he's about 5 years younger than AJ Styles. And LA Knight's still on the come up, so yeah, that went about how I expected. The Logan Paul, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens match. Initially, I predicted that Randy Orton would win, and then I changed my prediction after night 1 to Kevin Owens getting the win and the title so they could have that feel-good moment with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. I was wrong twice, although my initial hope that Logan Paul would retain happened. After night 1, I was hoping that Kevin Owens would win. So yeah, I was just completely wrong on that one, but that just means Logan Paul stays around, hopefully. I've got a little bit of a grudge over part-time champions, so hopefully he sticks around because he's pretty damn good at what he does. All right, we got a 6-man tag team match between Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. They've been referred to as the Pride in the past, but never officially on television, against the Final Testament. I've said before, neither one of those stables, I think, have reached their potential, but I was happy to see Lashley and the Profits get the win, and then the final testament goes back to NXT, where hopefully they can get some momentum for themselves, because they just haven't been connecting on SmackDown. And the main event, Roman versus Cody. Cody Rhodes finishes his story. I was as happy to see that as anyone else. I got, again, as I said I might, I got some stuff in my eye after Cody won. It was so emotional. There was so many like cool cameos. You had the Bloodline come out, and then you got Seth Rollins, which is probably the most compelling part of it all. Jey Uso, The Undertaker came out. John Cena came out. The reason I say Seth was the most compelling, and this has been, litigated online, is I did not see this coming. Seth said he was uniquely suited to be Cody's Shield. He comes out to the Shield music, and he doesn't even get a blow off on Roman Reigns. Roman's holding a chair, and he sees Cody reeling, and he sees Seth there, and he decides to take the shot at Seth Rollins because of the past trauma. Seth hit Roman in the back and betrayed him when they were still in the Shield together. Roman's emotion was overcome with emotion, so he had to get that shot off on Seth instead of finishing the job on Cody. Masterful storytelling. Seth did everything he said he would. He was Cody's Shield. He was so selfless, even lost his own world title in his pursuit to right his wrong, because he helped create the monster that Roman Reigns became. Masterful storytelling, wonderful, everything about that ending of WrestleMania, perfect. I loved it. What could I say that hasn't been said already? Cody Rhodes deserves it. He's a babyface that everyone has rallied behind in the way we haven't seen since arguably Bryan Danielson, but probably even more so, to be honest. Before that, maybe Hulk Hogan. Cody Rhodes is absolutely on fire, probably the biggest star in wrestling right now. From undesirable to undeniable, hell yes, so happy to see it. So before we wrap this up, let's briefly talk about what has happened since WrestleMania. Raw happened, started off, Triple H comes out and says we're in a new era. We have that face-off between Cody Rhodes and The Rock. It was kind of an awkward face-off, this is awkward, the crowd is chanting, as The Rock wanted to hold the WWE Championship. Then Cody's like, fine, if I can hold yours. Then The Rock puts something in Cody's hands. I'm guessing it has something to do with that watch that was referenced, the watch that Dusty Rhodes pawned off so Cody could go to acting class. Maybe he destroyed it and put it in Cody's hands and said, "Don't ever break my heart again," or foreshadowing a future program between the two of them. But here's the thing: we think it's the dirt sheets are saying WWE is going to hold off on Cody versus The Rock until WrestleMania, which, in my opinion, is a little bit unfortunate, because I don't like when they book WrestleMania a year out, because you don't realistically believe that Cody could lose the title until then, because they have that idea in their head. And I know it could, the match could go off without the championship involved, but The Rock made a point in saying that it feels right, him holding that WWE championship. So what they're really doing is foreshadowing a future title match. They've done that booking a year out before with The Rock and Rock Cena 2. By the time they got to Rock Cena 2, I didn't want to see it. I thought it, I said my piece about booking a year out like that, so that doesn't diminish my excitement for the program. I'm still super excited to see it. Just wish that they would do it a little bit sooner, so Cody could go on and have proper programs with other people where we at least have the thought that he could conceivably lose. Like, I don't want to see him lose it, but I want it to at least like seem like a possibility, so we tune in to see him succeed. We see Ilya Dragunov beat Shinsuke Nakamura, and we also see Roxanne Perez beat Indy Hartwell. Reason I'm referencing these matches because it's kind of weird, like seeing your NXT champions come out and say that they're going to declare for the draft. Well, if you know for sure that Ilya and Roxy are going to come up to the main roster, couldn't Ilya have dropped the title to Tony D'Angelo on the biggest stage and made a new star rather than holding on to it, until he gets drafted? Or else he'll have a program with Trick Williams. I guess that's probably the thinking, where they're going to have that match between Ilya and Trick, but then we pretty much know that Trick is going to win now because Ilya declared for the draft. The theme I'm kind of getting at / criticizing here is I don't like when they do too much to give away the finish of future title matches. It will be really cool when in the very likely event that Trick Williams takes that title off of Ilya. But yeah, so there was that. There was Cena and the Awesome Truth beating the Judgment Day. I know that was just a fun way to get John Cena on television, but I never like when the Judgment Day loses. They're really especially with Dom and JD, they're making them look so much like a joke. They just take loss after loss after loss. It's annoying. But you wanted to put over your new tag team champs, for there it goes. You also saw Jade Cargill beat Chelsea Green in a very quick fashion. Here's the thing about Jade Cargill: she is a star. When she was in AEW, she wasn't the greatest wrestler in the world. You don't necessarily know that she's improved much. This match really didn't give you much of a reason to think that she has, with the squash and all that. But hopefully she proves people like me that might be skeptical about her in-ring ability wrong in the future, because she's absolutely dripping with star power. So yeah, then we had that Fatal 4-Way match where CM Punk cost Drew McIntyre. It's a Fatal 4-Way. Jey Uso gets to challenge Damian Priest in the future. And that grids us into NXT, where we already pretty much talked about it. Trick Williams challenges Ilya Dragunov coming off of his win, but Carmelo Hayes isn't going to let him have it. We saw Tatum Paxley turn on Lyra Valkyria. That seemed like, I figured that would happen eventually, but it seemed in passing. Tatum slams Lyra into the steps, and then they just kind of move on with their life. I wish they would have let that breathe a little bit, because it was, their awkward relationship has had so much time invested in it. Yeah, and then we just, of course, Carmelo Hayes denying Trick his spotlight after he challenges Ilya. Not a whole lot of note. I thought that Javon Evans, in his match versus Scripps, that was my first time seeing him. He definitely looks like he is going to be a star in the future. So I look forward to seeing what he does. And then Dynamite. Now, we already talked about the CM Punk Young Bucks situation. I much like Cody Rhodes. You see me repping the CM Punk shirt. I am Switzerland. If anything, I love AEW, and I love CM Punk, and I love the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. I've got mixed feelings about Jack Perry after all that, but I look forward to seeing what he does in the future. Again, we already litigated all that, so let's just talk about Samoa Joe was going to defend his title against Dustin Rhodes, but Swerve comes out and beats the shit out of him. I thought that was a hot way to start the program. Then they said, well, Joe can't wrestle right now, so instead let's have Penta El Zero Miedo against Adam Edge Copeland for the TNT Championship, which was a great, like, it almost seemed like it was a standby match, even though it was scheduled. I guess it was kind of just bumped up a little bit. I thought that was really cool. It was a cool show. I'm not going to go match by match. And of course, they had Samoa Joe go over Dustin Rhodes because, they can't, give us too much Rhodes triumph in 1 week. And then, of course, Swerve comes out, makes a statement, etc., etc. It was a good show overall. So much wrestling has happened in the past week or so. I had so much fun. Now I'm kind of bummed that we're out of WrestleMania season and all that, but there's still a lot of good things happening. And more than anything, I'm kind of interested in seeing how AEW and WWE go and navigate this little tension they got going on. I'm sure WWE is probably done talking about AEW in any way at all, but it was fun while it lasted, and we'll keep our eyes peeled and see what happens from there. But hey, I've rambled for long enough. I gave you my thoughts about everything that's happening in wrestling and all that. So we're going to end that here. So until next time, thank you for watching Nihilist Wrestling. Revel in what you are.